never should have read the rules written on the walls. We thought it was a joke until the first game began and the walls started to win. The gravel that greets you. My name is Mark, and I'm the guy who always volunteers for the late shift. It's not that I'm a workaholic. It's the silence. The empty office between midnight and 3 a.m. is a sanctuary from the noise of the world, from the expectations, from having to be a person. I live at the end of Hemlock Lane, a name that always got a chuckle from the guys at work. Spooky, they'd say, but it was just a name. The house was a 30-minute drive from the city, the last mile and a half down a narrow, unlit road that curled through a thicket of pine and oak. It was my peace. At least it was until last Halloween. The night it happened, a thick, wet fog had rolled in, swallowing the moon. My headlights, 2 weak cones of yellow, did little more than push the darkness back a few feet at a time. The world was reduced to the hum of my old sedan's engine and the sound. That sound. The crunch of the gravel under my tires. It was a familiar rhythm, the sound of being almost home. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I turned into my driveway, the tires bouncing over the drainage ditch. The woods on either side were a solid wall of black, the trees like bony fingers clawing at the fog. I was leaning forward, squinting, trying to pick out the shape of my mailbox, when my headlights swept across something that shouldn't have been there. A figure. It was standing perfectly still, halfway down the drive, right where the old oak tree's branches form a canopy. Tall, impossibly gaunt, and dressed in what looked like a tattered, old-fashioned suit, the kind you see in sepia-toned photographs. Its face was a blank, pale oval, devoid of features, but in its hands, held out before it like an offering, was a jack-o'-lantern. It was lit from within, its carved grin a jagged, leering gash of orange light that seemed to pulse in the mist. My foot slammed the brake pedal before my brain even processed the command. The car lurched to a halt, the engine stalling out with a sickening shudder. The sudden silence was a physical blow. All I could hear was the frantic thumping of my own heart, a wild drum against my ribs. I stared, my breath fogging the windshield. The thing didn't move, it didn't breathe. It just stood there, holding that damned pumpkin, its featureless face pointed directly at me. The orange light from the grin didn't illuminate the woods around it. It just made the darkness deeper, more absolute. This isn't happening. A prank. A stupid Halloween prank. My hands, slick with sweat, fumbled for the keys. I turned the ignition. The engine groaned but didn't catch. I tried again, a pathetic whine. Panic, cold and sharp, began to drill into my spine. Reverse. Just get back to the road. I threw the shift into reverse and my headlights swept across the driveway behind me, and my blood froze. There was another one, identical, the same gaunt height, the same tattered suit, the same pale, blank face. It stood directly behind my car, blocking my retreat. And it, too, held a lit pumpkin, its jagged grin a perfect copy of the first. A dry, strangled sound escaped my throat. I twisted in my seat, my movements jerky with terror. Another one, and another. They were lining the driveway now, spaced evenly about 10 feet apart, a silent, horrifying honor guard. A dozen of them, maybe more. Their pumpkin grins flickered in unison, a hellish procession leading to and from my home. They had me boxed in, trapped. I was hyperventilating, the air in the car growing thin and stale. I looked back to the first one, the one in front of me. It hadn't moved an inch, yet it felt closer. Its presence was a pressure against the glass. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for it to be a hallucination, a trick of the fog and an overworked mind. When I opened them, it was there, not halfway down the drive. Not 10 feet away. It was right there, its blank face inches from the windshield, separated from me by nothing more than a layer of glass. The pumpkin was pressed against the glass, and I could see the guttering candle flame inside, dancing behind that cruel, carved smile. The orange light flooded the car's interior, washing over my hands, my face, staining everything in a sickly, infernal glow. It was a cold light. It carried the smell of damp soil and rotting leaves. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I was pinned in place by that faceless gaze, hypnotized by the pulsing light. The world had shrunk to this. Me, this thing, and the sound. The crunching started again. Crunch, scrape, crunch. It was the sound of gravel underfoot, but my car was silent. The engine was dead. The things outside were perfectly still. The sound was coming from inside the car. My eyes, wide with a terror so complete it felt like my soul was being shredded, slowly drifted from the horror at the windshield down to the passenger seat beside me. The seat was empty, but the sound was clearer now, right next to me. Crunch, scrape, crunch. It was the sound of someone sitting there, shifting their weight, turning their head to look at me. I couldn't see it. I couldn't feel it, but I could hear it. The presence was a weight in the air, a freezing cold spot leaching all the warmth from my body. The thing outside my window slowly raised its free hand and placed its long, pale fingers against the glass. It didn't knock. It just rested them there. And inside the car, the crunching gravel sound took a step closer. I don't know how I got out. I don't remember breaking the window or running through the gauntlet of those grinning sentinels. I remember the feel of cold, wet branches whipping my face, the taste of blood and dirt, and the sound of my own ragged sobs as I ran blindly through the woods, that terrible crunching sound following me step for step, never getting closer, never falling behind. The police found me at dawn, curled up in a drainage culvert a mile away, babbling. They drove me back to my house. The car was there, parked neatly in the driveway, the driver's side window shattered. There were no figures, no pumpkins. The only odd thing, they said, was the gravel. It was all disturbed, churned up as if by a struggle, all around the car. And leading from the driver's side door, across the lawn and into the woods, was a single, unbroken set of footprints. They were my own. I sold the house. I moved back to the city. But the noise never goes away. Every night, when the world gets quiet, I hear it. The crunch of gravel. It's in the hum of my apartment's refrigerator, in the static of a dead TV channel, in the pulse of my own blood in my ears. It's a reminder that I didn't escape anything that night. I just brought a piece of that driveway back with me, and sometimes in the dead of night I'll wake up to the smell of rotting leaves and the faint, orange glow of a grinning jack-o'-lantern from the corner of my dark room, and I'll hear the sound take a single deliberate step closer. The chalk outline. My name is David Patterson, and I used to believe that the worst kind of haunting was the kind you see in movies, the slamming doors, the grotesque figures in the shadows. I was wrong. The most terrifying hauntings are the quiet ones, the ones that mimic the most innocent parts of our lives, twisting them into something unrecognizable and vile. It all started with a box of chalk, not a cursed relic or a gift from a mysterious stranger. Just a cheap cardboard box of Halloween-colored chalk that my 5-year-old daughter Lily got from the local dollar store. It was a bright, crisp Halloween morning. The sun was out, but there was a bite in the air that promised a proper spooky night. Lily, bundled in her little purple jacket, was on the driveway, her small hand clenched around a piece of orange chalk, her tongue stuck out in concentration. I watched from the kitchen window, sipping my coffee, a smile on my face as she meticulously drew a hopscotch course. The lines were wobbly, the numbers inside each square a bit lopsided, but to her, it was a masterpiece. She used orange and black, the colors of the season. When she was done, she found a smooth, round stone from the garden and spent the next hour hopping, her giggles echoing like little bells in the quiet morning. It was a perfect, normal moment. I wish I could freeze time and live inside it forever. The first night, Halloween night itself, the trouble began. The party was over. Lily was asleep upstairs, her princess costume draped over a chair, her candy loot safely stashed. The house was dark and quiet. My wife Sarah was already in bed, and I was just about to turn in when I heard it. A soft, distinct thud from outside. Then, the light, skittering sound of footsteps on concrete. Tap, 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 scuffle, tap. My first thought was that a cat had gotten into the yard, or maybe a particularly bold raccoon. I walked to the front window and peered out into the darkness. The motion sensor light on the garage was on, flooding the driveway in a stark white glow. The hopscotch grid Lily had drawn stood out vividly against the gray concrete. But the driveway was empty, completely still. I waited for a full minute, seeing nothing. Shaking my head, I wrote it off as the wind or my tired mind playing tricks. I went to bed, the sound already fading from my memory. The second night, it happened again. This time, Sarah heard it too. We were in the living room, watching a movie, when the familiar sound cut through the dialogue. Thud. Tap, 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 scuffle, tap. We looked at each other, our faces a mirror of confusion and unease. Together we crept to the window. Again, the motion sensor light was on. Again, the driveway was deserted. The hopscotch course seemed to stare back at us, its cheerful colors now feeling strangely accusatory. "It's just an animal," Sarah said, her voice less than convincing. "Must be," I agreed, but a cold knot was tightening in my stomach. Why did the light only ever come on when we heard the sounds? And why did the footsteps always follow the exact specific rhythm of a child playing hopscotch? The third night I was ready. I didn't tell Sarah. I sat in the dark living room, in the armchair that gave me a perfect view of the driveway, a cold cup of coffee forgotten on the side table. The digital clock on the DVD player glowed 11:58 p.m. The house was silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. I felt foolish, a grown man lying in wait for a ghostly hopscotch player. Then, right at midnight, it started. Thud. The sound of the stone landing on the first square. My heart jumped into my throat. The motion sensor light flicked on, tap tap. I pressed my face against the cold glass of the window, my eyes straining. At first I saw nothing. Then the air over the hopscotch grid began to shimmer. It was like looking at heat haze rising from asphalt on a summer day, a rippling distortion in the shape of a small child. It was barely there, a transparent outline made visible only by the way it bent the light behind it. My breath caught in my chest. I could see it, this shimmering ethereal form, hopping perfectly from square to square. It moved with a practiced, joyful grace that was utterly chilling. It reached the end of the grid, picked up its invisible stone, and turned. It wasn't facing the beginning of the course. It was facing me. The shimmering air coalesced for a moment, and I saw the faint, smiling impression of a face in that rippling void. It was a simple, childlike smile, but it held no warmth. It was a smile of vacant, endless hunger. Then, it hopped again. This time it tossed the stone. It didn't land with the dry, light thud of a pebble on concrete. It landed with a sickening, wet, heavy splat. The sound was horribly organic, like a raw piece of meat being thrown onto a butcher's block. My eyes, wide with a terror I could barely comprehend, dropped from the shimmering figure to the chalk outline on the driveway. The orange and black lines began to darken. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow. But it wasn't. A deep crimson red began to seep from within the lines, as if the concrete itself was bleeding. It welled up slowly, lazily, filling the numbered squares one by one. The smell hit me then, even through the closed window. A thick, coppery, metallic scent that could only be one thing. Blood. I stumbled back from the window, my legs weak. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. The operator's voice was calm, professional, asking for my address. I couldn't form the words. All I could do was stare out the window at the driveway, where the hopscotch course was now a glowing, blood-filled grid under the harsh garage light. The shimmering figure was gone. The police found nothing. No blood, no footprints, no disturbance. Just a faded hopscotch course drawn in children's chalk. They gave me sympathetic looks, the kind you give someone who's under too much stress. We pressure washed the driveway the next day. The chalk and whatever had seeped into its lines vanished under the jet of water, but the stain remains. Not on the concrete, that's clean as a whistle. The stain is on our lives. Lily doesn't draw on the driveway anymore. She doesn't even go near it. Sometimes, late at night, long after midnight, I'll wake up and swear I can hear it. A faint, wet splat from outside, followed by the ghost of a child's giggle. And I know with a certainty that chills me to the bone that the game isn't over. It's just waiting for a new player. The reflection in the rear view. My name is Sarah, and I've always been a rational person. I balance spreadsheets for a living. I believe in things I can see, touch, and quantify. But there's a moment, a single frozen sliver of time that can dismantle a lifetime of logic. For me, that moment happened in my own driveway, reflected in a piece of polished glass. It was Halloween night, and I'd been at a low-key party at my friend Chloe's apartment. Nothing crazy. Some spooky cocktails, a few horror movies playing silently on the TV, the kind of evening where you laugh more at the jump scares than because of them. I'd only had one drink, nursing it for most of the night, because I hate driving even slightly impaired. By 1 a.m., the social battery was drained. I said my goodbyes, promising to text when I got home, and stepped out into the chill night air. My car, a dependable but unremarkable sedan, was parked a block away. The neighborhood was quiet, the frenzy of trick-or-treating long over. Porch lights were off, and the only decorations still visible were skeletons sagging in the rain and jack-o'-lanterns with collapsed, rotten grins. The drive home was uneventful. 20 minutes of empty streets and the soft hum of my radio. I remember feeling a sense of relief as I turned onto my street, Oakcrest Lane. It's a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind of place where nothing ever happens. My house, a modest ranch style at the very end, was a dark silhouette against the star-dusted sky. I pulled into the driveway, the tires crunching over a few stray leaves. The motion-sensitive floodlight above the garage blinked on, washing the concrete in a sterile white light. I shifted the car into park, turned the key, and the engine shuddered into silence. The sudden quiet was profound. It was the kind of deep country quiet that feels heavy, where every tiny sound is amplified. I sat there for a second, letting my eyes adjust, my fingers still curled around the warm key fob. I felt tired, the good kind of tired, ready to fall face first into my pillow. I reached for my purse on the passenger seat, the leather groaning under my weight. That's when I saw it, a flicker of movement in the rearview mirror. My eyes, almost of their own volition, snapped up to meet the reflection. There was someone in my back seat. The air in my lungs turned to stone. My entire body locked up, every muscle, every nerve ending screaming in unison. He was sitting directly behind me, perfectly centered. He was wearing a cheap plastic witch mask, the kind you find in every supermarket bin in October. It was a sickly green with a warty nose, stringy black hair attached to the sides, and narrow eye slits that were pools of absolute blackness. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. He just sat there, staring forward, his masked face reflected in my mirror. Time didn't just slow down. It shattered. 1,000 thoughts tried to form in my head and all failed. How? When? The doors were locked. I checked. I could feel the cold press of the door handle against my left arm, a taunting inch away. My right hand was still clutching my purse, my knuckles white. I couldn't look away from the mirror. I was trapped in that reflection, in that silent, horrific tableau. A minute passed. Or maybe it was an hour. The only sound was the frantic, wild thumping of my own heart, a frantic bird trying to beat its way out of my ribcage. My breath began to fog the windshield, the world outside growing hazy. Then the figure moved. It wasn't a lunge. It was a slow, deliberate, almost curious tilt of its head. The plastic mask angled downward, those empty eye slits seeming to focus directly on the back of my head. The movement was wrong. It was too fluid, too patient, and then a sound. From beneath the hard plastic of the mask, a low, muffled giggle seeped out. It wasn't a joyful sound. It was wet, guttural, like something bubbling up through mud. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated amusement at my terror. That sound broke the paralysis, a raw, guttural scream ripped from my throat, a sound I didn't even recognize as my own. I didn't think. I didn't plan. My left hand, fumbling and numb, found the door handle and yanked. The door flew open and the dome light clicked on, illuminating the car's interior in a soft yellow glow. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I threw myself out of the car, my purse forgotten, my keys still in the ignition. I hit the cold concrete of the driveway on my hands and knees, the impact jolting up my arms. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't feel my legs moving. I was pure animal instinct. The floodlight made my shadow a monstrous, stretching thing ahead of me as I fumbled for my house keys, my hands shaking so violently I could barely grip them. I got the door open, fell inside, and slammed it shut, throwing the deadbolt with a force that shook the frame. I ended up in the master bathroom, the smallest, most interior room of the house. I locked that door too and slid down to the cold tile floor, my entire body racked with violent tremors. It took me 3 tries to dial 911, my fingers slipping on the screen. The police were there in under 5 minutes. I heard the sirens, a blessed screaming choir approaching my street. From the bathroom window, I watched as 2 cruisers pulled up, their red and blue lights painting my quiet street in frantic strokes. I saw an officer, a tall woman with a stern but calm face, approach my car. The doors were still wide open, the interior light a beacon in the dark driveway. She shone her flashlight inside, moving it slowly across the front seats, then into the back. She looked around, then spoke into her shoulder radio. She walked to my front door and knocked. "Ma'am, it's Officer Miller. The vehicle is clear, clear. The word didn't make sense." I unlocked the door and stood there, hugging myself as she explained. There was no one in the car. No sign of a struggle. Nothing was stolen. But the mask, I stammered, my voice hoarse. He was wearing a witch mask. She gave me a kind, pitying look. "There's no mask in the vehicle, ma'am," I insisted. I had to see. With the officer at my side, I walked back out into the cold night, my legs feeling like rubber. The floodlight was still on. I approached the open rear door of my car, my heart once again a frantic drum. I leaned in, the smell of my own familiar air freshener filling my nose. The back seat was empty. But there, placed neatly in the very center of the leather bench, as if set down with deliberate care, was a single child-sized witch mask, the same sickly green plastic, the same stringy black hair. Officer Miller reached in and picked it up with a gloved hand. She turned it over, then looked back at me, her professional composure faltering for just a fraction of a second. "It's still warm," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "They never found any fingerprints. No evidence of a break-in. The case was closed as a prank, a profoundly cruel Halloween trick. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And every time I get into my car now, even in the bright light of day, my eyes are drawn to the rearview mirror. I wait for the flicker of movement. I listen for the muffled, wet sound of a giggle. And I know, with a certainty that has rewired my very soul, that the warmth left on that mask wasn't from a person. It was the residual heat of something else, something that had been waiting in the dark and has now in some way come home with me. The pumpkin that rolled back. My name is Kyle, and until last Halloween, I thought I understood the simple, stupid rules of being a teenager in a small town. You know the ones. Don't get caught, don't do anything permanently stupid, and always mess with old man Henderson. It was a tradition as reliable as the leaves turning. Every October, the reclusive Mr. Henderson would place a single massive pumpkin at the very end of his steep, gravel-covered driveway. It wasn't carved. It wasn't decorated. It was just a sentinel, a challenge. And every Halloween night, a group of us would take the bait. This year, it was me, my best friend Mike, and his younger brother Jake, who was just desperate enough to hang with the older kids to keep his mouth shut. The air was cold and smelled of wood smoke and decaying leaves. We'd done the main drag, gotten our candy, and now, buzzing on sugar and adolescent rebellion, we stood at the top of Henderson's Hill. The house was set way back, a dark shape against the deeper black of the woods, no lights in the windows. And there it was, just like always, the pumpkin. It was unnaturally large, its skin a deep Venus orange in the weak moonlight. It looked heavy, solid. "This is stupid," Mike whispered, his breath pluming in the air. "It's just a pumpkin. It's the principle," I said, the bravado in my voice only half faked. "He puts it here for this. It's part of the game." Jake just shuffled his feet, looking nervously at the dark house. "What if he's watching?" "He's always watching," I said, lowering my voice for effect. "That's what makes it fun." I was the one who did the honors. I walked up to the pumpkin, the gravel crunching loudly under my sneakers. I drew back my leg and gave it a solid, satisfying kick. It was heavier than it looked, but it budged, tipping onto its side with a thick, fleshy thump. Then gravity took over. It began to roll, slowly at first, then picking up speed, bouncing and tumbling down the steep, uneven driveway. We watched, grinning like idiots as it became a blur, then vanished completely into the absolute darkness of the woods that swallowed the bottom of the hill. The sound of its descent faded into a deep, consuming silence. A wave of giddy relief washed over us. We'd done it. Tradition upheld. We turned, laughing and shoving each other playfully, and started walking back towards the main road. The beam from Mike's phone flashlight dancing erratically ahead of us. We were about 50 yards away when we heard it. A slow, scraping rumble from behind us. It was the sound of something heavy being dragged over gravel. We all froze mid-step. The laughter died in our throats. Slowly, as if moving through water, we turned around. The pumpkin was back. It was sitting perfectly upright, in the exact same spot at the end of the driveway, as if we had never touched it. The moonlight seemed to cling to it now, making it glow with a faint, sickly luminescence. The night was dead silent, the way it gets right before a storm. "No way," Jake breathed, his voice trembling. "No freaking way." "One of us ran down and got it," Mike said, but his tone was uncertain. He shone his phone light down the driveway, the beam barely piercing the gloom at the bottom. "Who did it?" "Not funny, guys, but we were all there. All accounted for." A cold knot began to tighten in my stomach. This wasn't right. This wasn't part of the game. Screw this, Mike muttered, his pride clearly wounded. He marched back up the driveway, his jaw set. It's just a pumpkin. He walked right up to it and, with a grunt of effort, kicked it even harder than I had. This time, the sound of the impact was different, duller, wetter. The pumpkin flew off its perch and tumbled down the hill, its journey once again ending in the silent, waiting woods. This time, we didn't turn our backs. We stood there at the top of the hill and waited. The seconds stretched into a minute. The only sound was the ragged rhythm of our own breathing. The woods were a black pit, giving nothing back. Then it started. Thump, scrape, thump. My blood ran cold. It was coming from the darkness below. The sound was methodical, rhythmic, and utterly impossible. Something was rolling uphill. We watched, paralyzed, as the pumpkin emerged from the shadows at the bottom of the driveway. It wasn't bouncing or tumbling. It was rolling smoothly, steadily, against the steep incline, its weight making the gravel scrape and shift beneath it. It moved with a dreadful, purposeful momentum, like a slow-motion cannonball. It rolled right up to us, coming to a perfect, unnatural stop at Mike's feet. We stared down at it. The surface was bruised and dirty from its journeys. And now, running down its side, was a thin hairline crack. It was about 6 inches long, a black seam in the orange flesh. As we watched, frozen in terror, the crack pulsed. It was a slow, rhythmic bulging, like a heartbeat. From within the dark fissure, something glistened. Something wet and black and organic. A drop of thick, tar-like fluid oozed out, clinging to the pumpkin's skin. A smell hit us then, a sweet, rotten stench like a compost heap full of spoiled fruit and things long since dead. Mike let out a small, choked sound. He took a step back. The pumpkin, sitting at his feet, pulsed again. The crack widened infinitesimally, and we saw it clearly this time. A dark, membranous tissue, veined and alive, contracting and expanding inside the shell. This wasn't a vegetable. It had never been a vegetable. It was an egg, a cocoon, and we had just helped whatever was inside wake up. We ran. We didn't look back. We didn't speak until we were safe inside Mike's garage. The door locked behind us, huddled under the single bare bulb, trying to erase the image of that pulsing, living thing from our minds. We never got TP'd that year. No one did. But sometimes, late at night, I'll look out my window towards Henderson's Hill, and I'll see it. The pumpkin, back in its spot, a dark sentinel against the night. And I swear, on the coldest, stillest nights, I can hear it. A faint, wet, rhythmic sound carried on the wind. Thump, scrape, thump. It's not rolling anywhere now. It's just waiting. And the crack, I've seen through my dad's old binoculars, has gotten much, much wider. The last delivery. My name is Leo, and I've learned that desperation has a price. Last Halloween, I was behind on rent. My car payment was a month late, and the check engine light was glowing like a stubborn orange eye on my dashboard. So, when the delivery app pinged at 10:37 p.m. with a request for a single, large pepperoni pizza to an address on Blackwood Lane, and the promised tip was more than I usually made in 3 hours, I swallowed the lump of unease in my throat and hit accept. You don't say no to a $50 tip when you're drowning. The city lights faded in my rearview mirror, replaced by the dense pressing darkness of the county line. My GPS, a laggy app on my phone, guided me down roads that grew progressively narrower, the asphalt crumbling at the edges until it was little more than a ribbon of patched tar winding through a tunnel of ancient, gnarled oaks. There were no other cars. No house lights. The only sound was the whir of my worn tires and the frantic thumping of my own heart. The air coming through my cracked window was cold and carried the damp fungal smell of rotting leaves. Finally, my phone announced, "You have arrived." I slowed to a crawl, and there it was. The driveway was marked not by a mailbox, but by 2 imposing rusted iron gates that stood permanently open, their metalwork twisted into shapes that looked uncomfortably like thorny vines or skeletal fingers. A single flickering bulb in a rusty cage was mounted on one of the gate posts, casting a stuttering, jaundiced light. The driveway beyond was a chasm of pure black. I pulled in slowly, my headlights doing little to pierce the gloom. They illuminated a long, cracked concrete path that led up to a house I could only just make out. A hulking 2-story Victorian with a sagging porch and a steep witch hat roof. Every window was dark. My phone buzzed with the delivery instructions. I read them, and the chill in the air seeped into my bones. Do not honk. Leave the bag in the center of the driveway. Do not look at the windows. The all caps felt less like a request and more like a warning. The warm, greasy cardboard of the pizza box on my passenger seat suddenly felt alien, a trespasser in this silent waiting space. My mouth was dry. Every instinct, every primal nerve ending, was screaming at me to throw the car in reverse and get the hell out of there. But I saw that number again in my mind. $50. It might as well have been $1 million. Gritting my teeth, I killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was absolute and heavy, a physical weight on my eardrums. I grabbed the pizza bag, the thermal lining still holding the food's warmth, a stark contrast to the creeping cold surrounding my car. I opened the door, the ding-ding-ding of the interior alarm absurdly loud in the stillness. I walked quickly to the center of the driveway, the crunch of my own footsteps unnervingly loud. The house loomed ahead, a dark monolith. I forced my eyes to stay fixed on the concrete at my feet, fighting the powerful, morbid urge to look up at those black, vacant windows. What was I afraid of seeing? A face? A shape? Something worse? I didn't want to know. I bent down, placed the insulated bag neatly on the ground, and turned on my heel. I was 3 steps from my car when I heard the first lock click. It was the sound of the central locking system. My driver's side door was locked. I hadn't locked it. I never do on deliveries. I grabbed the handle and pulled. Nothing. I fumbled in my pocket for my keys, my fingers numb and clumsy with a fear that was now curdling into full-blown panic. The key fob felt slick in my sweaty palm. I pressed the unlock button. Nothing happened. I pressed it again and again, the plastic click-click-click sounding like a tiny, mocking beetle. That's when I heard the other sound. From behind me, back where I'd left the food, came a soft, wet, slithering noise. It was the sound of a giant slug moving over gravel, a slow, deliberate, sticky shifting. My blood turned to ice. I couldn't help myself. My eyes, wide with terror, flicked up to the side mirror. The pizza bag was gone. In its place, a long, glistening trail snaked across the cold concrete. It was thick and clear, dotted with bubbles, reflecting the stuttering gate light with a nauseating sheen. Saliva, a massive trail of it. It led from the empty spot where the bag had been right across the driveway, all the way to my car. It ended in a wet, gleaming puddle directly against my rear bumper. Slowly, against every screaming fiber of my will, my gaze was dragged from the mirror to the house itself. The front door, which had been firmly shut moments before, was now wide open. It wasn't just dark inside. It was a profound, absolute blackness, a void that seemed to swallow the very light from my trembling headlights. It was the kind of blackness that felt solid, a substance you could touch. And from that open doorway, the slithering sound started again, closer this time. It was moving. It was coming out. I stopped thinking about the $50. I stopped thinking about rent. I stopped thinking at all. Pure animal survival instinct took over. I jammed the physical key into the door lock, twisted, and yanked the handle. The door flew open. I fell into the seat, my hand shaking so violently I could barely get the key into the ignition. I turned it and the engine roared to life, a blessed mechanical sound. I didn't dare look in the rearview mirror. I slammed the car into reverse and stomped on the gas. The tires squealed and spun for a heart-stopping second on the slick concrete before catching. I flew backward out of the driveway, not caring what was behind me, swerved violently onto the road, and sped away, not looking back until the rusted iron gates were a mile behind me. I drove straight to the police station. I was hysterical, babbling about saliva and black doorways. They were polite, skeptical. They sent a car out to the address. They found nothing. No pizza bag, no slime trail. The front door of the house, they said, was old, warped, and sealed shut with rust and rot. It hadn't been opened in decades. They wrote it off as a Halloween prank. But they couldn't explain one thing. When I finally calmed down enough to clean my car the next day, I found it. On my rear bumper, tucked up near the license plate, was a single long dark hair. It was coarse, thick as a wire, and when I touched it, it was still damp. And it smelled faintly, unmistakably of pepperoni and something else. Something ancient and deeply, deeply wrong. I quit delivery that night. I'd rather be evicted, because I know what I saw, and I know that thing, whatever it was, got a taste of what I brought it. And sometimes in my nightmares, I see that open doorway, and I hear that wet, slithering sound, and I know, with a certainty that chills me to the marrow, that it's still waiting for its next delivery. The Impostor Car. My name is Mia, and the most terrifying thing in the world isn't a monster you can name. It's the slow, meticulous unraveling of your own reality, thread by thread, until you're left standing in the cold, wondering if the life you're living is even yours anymore. It all started on Halloween night, a few hours ago, and I'm not sure it will ever truly end. The air was crisp and smelled of wood smare and burnt sugar. My daughter, Chloe, was buzzing, her little hand clutching mine as we walked back to our car, her unicorn costume, a riot of iridescent fabric and a single glittery horn, seeming to glow in the darkness. She was tired, her steps heavy, the weight of a plastic pumpkin full of candy making her list to one side. It was a perfect, normal night, the kind you take for granted. Our street, Elmhurst Drive, was quieting down. Porch lights were winking off one by one. I helped a nearly sleeping Chloe into her car seat, buckled her in, and drove the familiar 10-minute route home. I was tired too, looking forward to a cup of tea and getting my sugar-crashed daughter into bed. I turned into our driveway, the ID headlights sweeping across the front of our modest, two-story colonial, and then I saw it. Another car was already parked there. I slowed to a stop, my own sedan now idling behind its twin. It was the exact same make, model, and color as mine. A deep blue SUV. Same year, same trim. The only difference was the license plate, which was caked with enough dirt and grime to be unreadable. The interior was dark. "Daddy's home early," I murmured, more to myself than to Chloe, who was already half asleep in the back. A flicker of relief mixed with puzzlement. My husband, Ben, was supposed to be working late, a common occurrence these days. Maybe he'd managed to slip away. I pulled my car up alongside the curb in front of our house, deciding not to block the mystery vehicle. Unbuckling a drowsy Chloe, I carried her up the walkway, her head heavy on my shoulder. The house was dark, which was odd if Ben was home. I fumbled for my keys, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. "Ben?" I called out, my voice echoing in the stillness. Silence. I flipped on the living room light. Nothing was out of place. The TV was off. The house had that particular hollow quiet of an empty building. A cold knot began to form in my stomach. I put Chloe down on the couch, her unicorn horn tilting comically, and did a quick walk through. Kitchen, empty. Dining room, empty. Upstairs, all the bedrooms and bathrooms were dark and vacant. Ben's work bag wasn't by the door. His coat wasn't on the hook. The puzzlement was now full-blown unease. Who did that car belong to? I went back to the front window and peered through the blinds. The blue SUV was still there, sitting in our driveway as if it owned the place. Its dark windows seemed to stare back at me, opaque and secretive. The street lamp at the end of our drive cast a sickly orange glow over its hood. That's when I felt it. A vibration in the pocket of my jacket. I jumped, my heart lurching. I reached in and pulled out my keys. Not my phone, my key fob. It was humming in my palm, a steady, insistent tremor. I stared at it, dumbfounded. I'd never felt it do that before. It felt alive, like a trapped insect. As I watched, the headlights of the imposter car in our driveway flashed once, a brief, silent burst of white light. My breath hitched. I took an involuntary step back from the window. Then, with a quiet, sophisticated purr, the engine of the other SUV turned over. It was so quiet, so smooth. It idled perfectly, a low thrum. That seemed to vibrate through the floorboards and into the soles of my feet. It began to move. Slowly, deliberately, it backed out of our driveway. The tires crunched over the fallen leaves with an eerie precision. It was leaving. A wave of confused relief washed over me. Maybe it was just a mistake. A neighbor's guest, confused about the address. The car completed its backward arc and paused, its front end now pointing away from our house, ready to drive off. For a moment, it sat there under the jaundiced glow of the street lamp, its interior still shrouded in shadow, and then the light caught them, the driver and the passenger. The world didn't just slow down, it stopped. The air was sucked from my lungs, My heart didn't beat. It simply ceased to function. In the driver's seat was a woman. She had my hair, my profile, my winter coat. She was me, and in the passenger seat beside her was a small girl. She wore an iridescent unicorn costume, complete with a single glittery horn. It was Chloe's costume, an exact copy. They both stared straight ahead through the windshield, their faces blank, expressionless, and utterly vacant. They were like mannequins, perfect in every detail but completely devoid of a soul. My own keys continued to vibrate feverishly in my hand, a sympathetic magic I didn't understand. Then, the car carrying my double and my daughter's copy pulled smoothly away. It drove down Elmhurst Drive, turned the corner, and vanished into the night. The vibration in my key fob ceased instantly. The silence that rushed back in was deafening, broken only by the soft, sleepy breathing of my real daughter on the couch behind me. I stood there frozen, my forehead pressed against the cold glass of the window, staring at the empty driveway. The rational part of my brain, the part that pays bills and makes grocery lists, was screaming that it was a coincidence, a prank, a hallucination born of Halloween exhaustion. But the primal, ancient part of me knew the truth with a chilling certainty. They weren't leaving. They were exchanging places. I slowly turned from the window and looked at my daughter, sleeping so peacefully on the couch. Her unicorn costume was rumpled. A few pieces of glitter had fallen onto her cheek. She was real. She was mine. But as I stood there watching her, a new, more insidious fear began to uncoil in my gut, cold and suffocating. It was the fear that comes not from what you've seen, but from what you can no longer be sure of. If they are out there, then who or what is in here with me? If these tales sent a chill down your spine, support the channel by subscribing and turning on notifications. The darkness is always watching.